Lady Walker Show.
Howdy, howdy, and more howdy to you. Welcome to the Lady Walker Show. I am yours truly, Lady Walker, yes. And my beloved peeps, you know, like I know that everything is working out for my greatest good and only good lies before me. Now, with me saying that, my guest is here to share with us his story on dealing with the loss of a loved one via suicide. So, welcome to the show, Christopher Maddox. Welcome back, Christopher. It's been a minute.
Yes, ma'am, it has.
Because I think it's been many moons since I interviewed you on the show.
It's been a few years.
Yes, but we see each other from time to time at church.
Right.
Now, about a year, has it been a year or so?
Ma'am, it's been a year.
Yes, you experienced the death of your father through suicide.
That's right.
And now you are going forth and you are letting the world know what happened and how you are dealing with it.
That's right.
So tell us what prompted you to want to share this side of your life? Because I'm pretty sure it could be a trying thing.
Oh, yeah, it has been. The Lord put it on my heart to come forward and to come on the show. I'm sure there's other people out here that's dealing with suicide. Suicide is it's a hard thing.
Yes, I am pretty sure
it's a testing situation, and I just want to say that I put a book report together for a GD class, and they wanted me to write a paper. I didn't know what to write, and so I went to the internet, and the numbers from suicide a year, it's out of the roof. And over half of those, what is shocking is over half of those are born-again Christians.
Really?
People who confess Jesus as Lord.
Now that is shocking.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's very shocking.
To know that half of them are born again Christian.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
When you see someone, they look like they have it all together. And I wore a mask. I was ashamed. I was hurt. There was a lot of feelings I was feeling. And, I would go to church, I'd put this mask on, I would smile. I mean, you would never, if I did not come out and tell you what I was dealing with, no one would ever know. Wow. I mean, because I was walking around putting that mask on. And I wasn't really ready to come out and tell everybody, because you know how people, they talk and
judgmental at times.
Right there it is, right there. And I wasn't ready to come out yet. And so, I held it in, and it caused problems in my marriage. You can imagine the stress. It was causing us to fight. And I mean, if my wife would have left me, I wouldn't blame her. And it was just so much stress on me. Man, if my heart would have stopped, I wouldn't have blamed my heart. That's how much stress suicide puts on folks.
So your father has been dead a year.
Right.
How close were y'all?
At one time, we were very, very close. If he hadn't heard from me by noon, he was calling me. If I hadn't heard from him by noon, I was calling him, and he'd call me and say, let's go to lunch, let's go to dinner. If I needed money, he would say, meet me over here, and we'd meet up. And you know, but just over the years, he got depressed. We just had a family reunion this past Sunday, and I found out through a family cousin. He lives in Michigan. I never met him before until this past weekend, and he said the year before that, my dad told him that he was depressed. I knew he was depressed, but I didn't know that he was that depressed.
Well, what do you think led to him being depressed? Any kind of illness?
Yes, I believe.
Relationship problems?
That, and he just, I believe he was hiding a medical condition. I knew diabetes run in the Maddox family. I knew he had diabetes. I knew he had a couple strokes, and I knew he had a heart attack, but I found out he had a second heart attack that I didn't even know. And I'm sure that...
So he didn't share that?
No, he didn't. I'm sure there was some kind of medical condition there that he was hiding because, he planned this thing out. This man even called the funeral home to see how much it would cost to be cremated.
Wow.
And he got rid of all this stuff and his medicine. He threw all that stuff away because he knew that I was coming once the news got brought to me. He knew that I was coming over there, and he knew I would investigate.
So when you would talk with him, were there any kind of signs that you were able to witness via the telephone calls or anything he said that would lead you to?
I knew he was depressed, but there wasn't nothing there that was, giving me the notification that he was about to do this.
And earlier you said you felt ashamed. Why did you feel ashamed?
Well, there was some unfinished business between me and him. We got in an argument like a year before he committed suicide, and my dad, the older he got, the meaner he was. And,
really?
Yeah, and we had a little falling out, and I picked up the phone, and I've tried to call him, and he would slam the phone down, and he'd tell me, quit calling, leave me alone. And so I took his advice.
And you think at that time he was going through a depression at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And he would say, don't call him?
Right.
Well, you have brothers and sisters, or?
Yes, I got an older brother, and then there's me, and then I got a half sister, and then I got another brother. So
will he tell them the same thing?
I'm sure. He wouldn't come out of the house. I'd call him and ask him. He's never met my wife, Leslie. And
well, hold that for a moment, and then
Okay.
we are going to come back and let you pick up right there that he never met your wife at that time, but he did meet her before he...
No, he's never, ever met Leslie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back with that.
Okay.
All righty, beloved, there you have it. We'll be right back. Welcome back, my beloved peeps. My guest is Christopher Maddox. I think I'm pronouncing your last name right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Christopher, now you were talking about your father who committed suicide about a year ago. He never met your wife, Leslie.
That's right. I called him on Father's Day, and I said, Dad, he said, what? He said, what? I said, I was calling to wish you happy Father's Day, and I said, I got remarried, and he said, I heard. I said, I would like for you to come and meet us for lunch or meet us for dinner. And he said, oh, I just work. I knew at one time he was working a lot. And anyway, we kept inviting him and inviting him.
So he stayed how far from you?
From Clinton.
Oh,
Clinton
okay.
to Florence.
Okay.
Actually, out in the county, almost in Bolton.
Okay.
And so I kept calling him and inviting him to come and to have lunch or have dinner with us, and he just kept giving me the excuse that he's working all the time, and he's a truck driver, and he was
okay.
working over the road a lot, and so you know, I thought he was still working. But after he committed suicide, my uncle told me he hadn't worked in 3 years. Yeah, blew me out of the water.
What? And he never shared that info
Nope.
with you?
Nope. He kept telling me he was working, and my uncle had a hard time getting him to come out of the house, and other people, they would have get-togethers and try to get him to come out. He would never come out.
So he really was depressed,
He was.
especially when you are secluding yourself like that.
Right, yeah. I mean,
left to those dark thoughts.
right. And, you know, he just felt like, I went over to my grandparents. He inherited my grandparents' house. And so the next day, I went over there to my grandparents' house, and my wife was going through some papers, and it was just, I was overwhelmed, and I was crying, and so I had to go outside, and I went outside, and I stood under the carport, and had tears rolling down my eyes, and I asked the Spirit of God, I said, what happened here? He said, Christopher, your father was so depressed, it wasn't even funny.
Wow.
He said he felt like you didn't love him. He didn't feel like none of his children loved him. He felt like none of his family loved him. And that was so far from the truth.
That is so interesting, because you never know what would lead somebody to think that your family don't love you.
Right.
And when they are depressed, what
Right.
do? No one cares.
That's right.
So I don't want to be a burden to anybody.
Right. And that, you know, that's where he was. See, the devil sells a person a lie like that, and they buy into that, and the enemy's whispering in their ears, saying, "Oh, Christopher don't love you, Carrie don't give a care about you, Nikki don't want to have nothing to do with you, your Bryce don't want to have nothing to do with you." See, a person who commits suicide, if they would really sit down and really think this thing out, they would see the only people that it would hurt, it's not going to hurt them, it's going to hurt the people who's left behind.
Right.
And so I come from a broken home. My mom's been divorced from my dad for years. And so I come from a broken home. My dad abused my mom. He abused me and my older brother. And I lived in victory for about 12 years from those wounds.
Oh.
When you're abused and suicide, there's wounds. And those wounds have to be healed. And so I went to him, and we made things right. And
Made amends with each other.
Yeah, we made amends. And I mean, we were father and son, and I mean, we were family. And so, but when he did what he did, Lady Walker, it was like, remember when you were a little girl and you were riding a tricycle or a bike and you fell off and you scraped your knee or your elbows? That it's like the scab was falling off of those wounds, and it's like those wounds opened back up. And
when he committed suicide.
Right, when he committed suicide. Yeah, because we walked in victory together for 12 years. I mean, we were like two peas in a pod. Wow. Yeah, we were father and son. We were very close.
And then he started shutting off from you.
Right. Slowly, it just he started just shutting down.
And I guess that was depression started taking over.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
And you were called, and he wouldn't answer the phone.
That's right.
And you did that for a while?
Yes, ma'am, I sure did.
And does his brother stays near him?
Right, just right around the corner.
So he was able to go and check on him.
Right.
Did the brother say, he said anything that will alert him that maybe he was thinking that he would commit suicide?
No. My uncle said that my dad would come over every evening and sit on the couch and talk to him, and no one saw this coming. Nobody knew anything.
And that's the thing, because sometimes when a loved one commits suicide, you don't always see the signs. You don't, right. And if you don't know what signs to look for, you'll miss them anyway.
Right. And they're not gonna. They're not gonna come out and say, "Hey, I'm about to commit suicide."
Exactly. Unless they try to leave some clues around.
Right.
And maybe when they do that, maybe they really don't want to commit it. But then you got those who commit suicide, they leave no clues.
That's right. When I was talking about shame, there was times where I'd wake up in the morning and I turn to my wife and, I've been disabled for a few years through my back. My wife had to quit her job to take care of me. And so, there was a time there when money was kind of tight, but I would wake up and Spirit of God would prompt me and tell me you need to go see him. You need to go see him. Well, we didn't have the gas money.
Yeah, the financial means at that time.
To go over there. And I kept getting these promptings. And one morning I woke up, I told my wife, I said, I don't know what's about to happen. I said, I feel like something is about to happen to my dad. And so it wasn't, I think it was maybe a few days later. I was asleep. I kept tossing and turning.
Oh, that is something. You just felt that
Yeah.
something was about to happen to your father.
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I just had this unction from the Spirit of God that something was about to happen. So I went to bed on a Friday night, and man, I was tossing and turning all through the night, and I couldn't sleep, so I sat up. And Spirit of God said, your dad just committed suicide.
Oh, wow. Hold that.
Yeah,
We got to take a break. Man, that is something.
Yeah.
All righty. We're going to take a break and come back and let
Yes,
you
ma'am.
pick up right there. We'll be right back. Welcome back, beloved. My guest is Christopher Maddox, and he is sharing with us his father's suicide. So you were saying that you woke up the day he committed suicide.
Right. And so I got out of the bed and I went to the kitchen table and I just sat there and I prayed and the Lord just told me, your father just committed suicide. And I didn't know what to do with that. And so I sat it on the shelf and I laid back down and I went to sleep. It was about around lunchtime. Me and my wife was watching college football when I got a call, and so my uncle called and left a voicemail, and one of my uncles, my aunt's husband, and so they live on the other side of Florence. We live on this side of Florence, and so my uncle that lives close to my dad told everybody, said that it was suicide, and said, don't tell Christopher that it's suicide. Just tell him that his father was found deceased. He said, what we'll do is we'll get him over here to my house and we'll break the news to him and let him know what really happened. And so there was a letter left behind. Basically, the letter was just saying that he wanted to be cremated. There was checks, and he wrote checks and signed checks in the safe and left the safe open and things like that. And he just said, don't tell his children. And my uncle said, he said, look, I got to go to sleep at night. And he said, I couldn't keep this from y'all. And so he said, I had to tell you, Christopher, what really happened.
And he shot himself? That's how he...
Right, he shot himself in the heart.
Said earlier he had already planned this.
Yeah, he called the funeral home to see how much it would cost so he'll know how much to write the check for. Yeah, see, he called one funeral home and we thought he had some arrangements. And when we called, they're like, man, we don't know that guy. We don't, we don't have nothing on him. So we called the funeral home that did my grandfather and did my grandma, and so.
Oh, that is something. So you're going through this. You're going with what just happened. He took his life. Now we got to deal with this, and then you got other business that have to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he had everything thought out like he thought he wanted it.
Right. And see, he got rid, like when the investigator came over at Hinds County, came over there to investigate it. The investigator said, "Where's his clothes at?" He used to be a sales rep with Western Union. He had suits and ties, and he had a lot of clothes and a lot of stuff, a lot of tools, and there was only a few tools that was recovered. And his clothes, all he had was 2 pair of pants and 2 T-shirts hanging up in the closet. He
Now,
had his mind made
what y'all
up.
think happened to the clothes?
He probably just gave them away or got rid of them. Yeah, I mean, he had his mind made up. Yeah.
And that's a sad thing. They have their mind. They think, they can't see a brighter future. They
Right.
cannot see that the storm
Right.
will be over, whatever storm you are going through, and that the sun will come out again. They don't see it from that standpoint.
And see, the enemy, he kept messing with me and harassing me at night. And man, I had to go to the doctor. I had to go get on some medicine to help me sleep at night. I had to go be put on some anxiety medicine. And man, I just kept having nightmares, and the devil kept telling me, yeah, you a man of God, you operate in discernment. He said you could have went over there, and you would have been able to discern that.
Trying to lay the guilt trip on you. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that he kept messing and harassing me on that level. He kept saying, you operate, you're filled with the Holy Ghost, and you operate in discernment. And he said you could have went over there and you would have been able to discern that, and you should have stopped that. And I couldn't stop it.
Right.
I could have maybe slowed it down. Because I mean, I couldn't be over there 24 hours.
24/7, yes.
Yeah. And so
how did you overcome that?
Through prayer, and through counseling, and man, I would cry all the time, and like I said, I was having nightmares, and I was just praying and asking God to send me somebody who has dealt with suicide and that can help me get over this hump. And so I even forgot about this. I got a doctor's friend he's no longer doing psychiatrist work, but he has in the past. And so I actually forgot about Dr. Smith. And so anyway, I was meeting with him for several months, and he made I did not know this, he made a statement that he would never know what happened to his daughter, but I found out later that his daughter committed suicide. And when you're dealing with suicide, you need a support group.
Yes.
And God, I didn't put that group together. The Spirit of God put that group together. I asked Him to send me people who could help me, who could counsel me, who can relate.
Right.
If you never walked through suicide, how can you help somebody?
Right.
And so I was asking the Spirit of God to send me some folks that have dealt with suicide who could help me and who could help me through this.
So are you still having to meet with the group, or y'all do telephone meetings?
Right. Here, even a year later, I have these ladies and gentlemen that's on this group, the support group. They call me once or twice a week. Has
it helped thus far?
Oh, yes. And they text me and check on me. If they hadn't heard from me, they're like, how you doing,
Yeah, because when you look at suicide, that's a different kind of death. It really is.
Right. And see, Lady Walker, if he would have passed away from natural causes, I would have been fine with that. But it was that suicide that just kind of rocked the boat.
Right. Well, we are going to take a final break and come back, and just in case someone is interested in you coming out and sharing your story with them, I'll let you give out that info.
Okay.
All righty, my beloved peeps, we will be right back. Welcome back, love. My guest is Christopher Maddox. Christopher is here with his wife, Leslie. She's sitting over there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, lovely young woman. Anyway, Christopher is going to give out any contact information just in case whomever are listening to the show, if you are interested in Christopher coming out and sharing his story with you, he's going to give out contact information.
My phone number is 601-954-9965. You can leave me a voicemail, I'll get back with you, or you can text me and I'll get back with you. And if you're interested in bringing me in to your churches and I come and share my story, give me a call. If you've been watching and you've been dealing with suicide, I would love to pray with you, and I would love to meet with you and help you through this hard time. Thank you.
Well, Christopher, I'll tell you what, that's a sad thing that
Right.
you had to experience
Yes,
that.
ma'am. Oh,
You know,
yeah.
your father whom you had,
Yeah.
you ended up mending their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The relationships between you two,
Right.
ended up mending that, only to have to deal with his
Right.
death via suicide.
Right.
And now you are on the road to recovery.
Yes, ma'am. You know, one thing I wanted to share was during all this, I was praying, and I kept hearing the Spirit of God say "good," G-O-O-D, good, and I kept hearing this word "good," good, good, and I said, "Okay, Lord, what good can come out of suicide?" And the Lord said, "I want you to write a book. I want you to be able to help people." He said, I'm going to create you a platform, and you're going to be able to reach a lot of people who are dealing with suicide."
Yes.
And so I said, "Okay, if you want me to write this book, I need a title." And so the Lord told me, He said, "I want your title to be Bouncing Back from Suicide." And I'm actually getting ready to meet with Pastor Marcus at church.
Yes.
He's written a couple books, and he's going to give me a layout how to get this book going.
Well, good, Christopher.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm pretty sure the next time when you come back, you'll have that book written.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Thanks, Tria, for coming out and sharing
Yes,
your
ma'am.
story with us.
All right.
All righty, my beloved peeps. Thanks to Tria for tuning in. And I, Lady Walker, your BFF, I am going to plant you now, and I will not forget to dig you up. Ta-ta.